The man had driven this highway more times than he could remember. It was one of those routes that slowly becomes routine, almost automatic. City work late at night, tired eyes, empty roads, and the comfort of knowing every turn like muscle memory. But that night felt different from the beginning, though he couldn't explain why. Maybe it was the exhaustion sitting heavier than usual, the kind of tired where his thoughts felt delayed, like his brain was half a second behind reality. He kept driving past the last fuel station, past the last cluster of streetlights, and into the stretch where the world starts to lose detail. Then his GPS lit up with a suggestion. Faster route available via Forest Road 17B. Save 28 minutes. He frowned immediately. He had. We seen that suggestion before and always ignored it. Forest Road 17B wasn't officially marked as dangerous, but everyone knew the stories. Poorly maintained, dense forest, no lighting, and worst of all, people who took it at night often said the same thing afterward. It just didn't feel right. He stared at the screen longer than usual. 28 minutes saved. Just a shortcut. It's fine, he muttered. And with that small decision, he turned off the main highway. At first, everything felt normal. Too normal. The wide highway behind him disappeared, replaced by a narrow road into thick darkness. The forest closed in, trees standing too close together, branches forming uneven shapes above like something was watching from above. The headlights carved a tunnel of light, showing only what was ahead. 10 minutes passed, then 15, then 20, and the silence felt heavy, not scary, just unnatural, like the forest wasn't empty, but deliberately quiet. He rolled the window down, then back up. The air felt colder, damp, and still. It's just a forest, he told himself. But then something changed his focus. His phone lost network. All signal bars dropped. Great, he sighed, tapping the screen. But the GPS was still working, still guiding him deeper. He exhaled, trying not to overthink it, until he saw something ahead. A sharp bend. And right at the edge, a broken tree trunk lying off the road. Large, split, weathered like it had been there for years. He slowed as he approached. Something made him uneasy. He passed it, kept driving, and then frowned, because he had seen that tree before. Same shape, same jagged split, and a faint red mark on the bark near the base. He looked in the rearview mirror, then shook his head. No, coincidence, he muttered, trying to convince himself. But the feeling didn't leave. 10 minutes passed, then the road bent. Again, and there it was. The same broken tree, same bend, same red mark, same position. His foot lifted off the accelerator. The car slowed. And this time, he didn't look away. He stared, searching for a difference, but there was nothing, identical in every detail. Okay, that's not normal, he said, his voice sounding too loud. His heart began a frantic, irregular rhythm against his ribs, a drumbeat of pure dread that pulsed in his temples. He gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles turning a stark, bloodless white as he tried to anchor himself. He felt the cold air of the vents pressing against his face, yet his skin was clammy, with a sudden, icy sweat. It was as if the car itself was trying to warn him, the dashboard lights flickering in a stuttering cadence that mirrored his own mounting terror. He checked the GPS. It looked normal, route forward, but the distance indicator dropped slightly, stopped, then increased. He frowned. What? He continued driving, slower, scanning every detail. Trees, bends, shadows, and then it happened again. The broken tree appeared a third time. Same spot, same red mark, everything. He went quiet, grip tightening on the wheel. A nervous laugh escaped him, but died. It didn't feel like coincidence. It felt like repetition, like the road wasn't moving forward, but folding back. He checked the mirror. Even the road behind felt unfamiliar, like it had changed while he wasn't looking. A heavy dread built in his chest. He wasn't lost. The space itself felt wrong, like a closed loop pretending to be a road. He slowed further, trying to think. Then the GPS spoke. Not its calm tone, but distorted, delayed, recalculating route. He waited. Then it spoke again, and his stomach dropped. "You are back again." He froze. The map had changed. The route was circular, the same road feeding into itself, and the ETA had changed to one word: unknown. He looked ahead, and there it was again, the broken tree, waiting, closer, like it knew he would never stop going forward. In the quiet, he heard the faint sound of his own engine echoing behind him. The atmosphere was suffocatingly thick, and as the realization took root that he was never leaving, the world seemed to peel away, revealing an endless, starving loop of gray bark and silent, watching shadows that waited for his surrender. Dennis was playing a simple game of hide-and-seek with his father and brother. He vanished into the dense underbrush near the trail, laughing as he ran. When he didn't emerge after a few minutes, his father, Clyde, began to call his name. The laughter had stopped. The woods, which had been full of the sounds of a vibrant summer afternoon, seemed to suddenly hold its breath. What followed was one of the largest and most intensive search and rescue operations in park history. Over 1,400 people, including Green Berets and specialized tracking units, searched the rugged, unforgiving terrain for weeks. They combed every ravine, ridge, and dense thicket. Yet, despite the massive manpower, the use of helicopters, and the presence of highly trained searchers, not a single trace of the boy, no clothing, no footprints, no stray toys, not even a candy wrapper was ever found. But the most disturbing aspect of the case isn't just the total disappearance. It is the eyewitness testimony that surfaced during the search. A few miles away from where Dennis vanished, a family named the Keys was hiking. They reported hearing a sudden, loud, and sickening scream that echoed through the wilderness, a sound so jarring it stopped them in their tracks. Moments later, they allegedly saw a man, described as rough-looking and unkempt, emerging from the brush, moving with strange, hurried purpose. They claimed they saw this man carrying something large over his shoulder, something that looked like a bundle of clothes or a sack. The man disappeared into the thick foliage before they could shout to him. When news of the missing boy broke, the Keys family came forward, convinced they had seen a kidnapper. Yet, even with this lead, investigators found nothing. No footprints, no vehicle tracks, no trace of a struggle. It was as if the boy and the man had simply dissolved into the thick mountain mist. Years later, the case remains a haunting mystery. The terrain in the Great Smoky Mountains is notorious for its deceptive difficulty: steep slopes, dense rhododendron thickets that can hide a person only a few feet away, and sudden, disorienting weather shifts. Skeptics argue that a young child could have wandered off, succumbed to the elements, and had their body reclaimed by the vast, unsearchable forest. But that fails to explain the absolute lack of physical evidence after a search of such unprecedented intensity. There is an eerie, lingering quality to the Dennis Martin case. Those who spend time in these forests often speak of a wrongness that occurs when you step too far off the path. It is the palpable feeling of being watched, the sudden, unnatural silence that falls over the trees, and the way the light seems to play tricks on the eyes. In the dense, ancient wilderness of the Smokies, the line between reality and the unknown feels dangerously thin. To this day, Dennis Martin is remembered not just as a lost child, but as a ghost story that the Park Service cannot explain away. The forest keeps its secrets well, and in the case of Spence Field, it seems the trees never intended to let their passenger go. It remains a stark, chilling reminder that some mysteries don't end in answers. They only end in the quiet, empty expanse of the woods, where the wind carries faint, lingering whispers of things that should have been found, but never were. The searchers eventually left, the media moved on, and the park resumed its quiet, imposing presence. But the mystery of what happened to Dennis in that narrow window of time continues to baffle investigators. The truth, if there is one, remains buried beneath layers of leaves and mountain soil, lost in the shadows of an ancient forest that knows exactly what happened. While the rest of the world is left to wonder forever, trapped in the chilling realization that in the deep, dark wilderness, a person can simply cease to be. The silence of those woods is, perhaps, the final testimony to a mystery that has refused to fade, serving as a dark warning that there are places in this world where the map ends and the unknown begins. And in those places, safety is merely an illusion. Every time a hiker steps onto that trail, they are walking into a space defined by a question that will likely never be answered. A lingering, cold dread that reminds us that beneath the beauty of the national park, there is an untamed, indifferent force that occasionally claims what it wants, leaving only questions in its wake. This is the dark legacy of Dennis Martin, a story that refuses to be forgotten, etched into the history of the Smokies, as a testament to the fact that some things are simply lost to the mountain, forever beyond our reach. The job was supposed to be easy money, a private security contract for a remote 1,000-acre timber plantation in the Pacific Northwest. 2-man patrols, graveyard shift, 6 weeks of isolation. Ryan and Steve were college kids, desperate to pay off tuition, and the pay was enough to overlook the strange clauses in the contract. "Don't leave the Jeep," the supervisor had warned, his eyes lingering on the pitch-black tree line. "And if you see a flicker of light deep in the woods, just keep driving. Do not, under any circumstances, investigate." For the first few weeks, it was just long hours and bad coffee. But on the 22nd night, the dynamic shifted. Ryan was behind the wheel, staring into the endless tunnel of their headlights, when Steve went pale, pointing toward the heavy underbrush. "Did you see that? About 50 yards back, someone was holding a flashlight." Ryan didn't see it. He told Steve to shake off the nerves. But an hour later, Steve saw it again. A singular, stationary beam of light, perfectly level, standing deep in the prohibited zone. This time, Ryan saw it too. When he slowed to a crawl, the light didn't flicker, it simply extinguished, swallowed by the dark. "We should radio it in," Steve whispered. Ryan reached for the comms, but the radio didn't give them a dial tone. It emitted a series of rapid, rhythmic clicks. It sounded like a code. "That's not a malfunction," Ryan said, his skin crawling. "That's a signal." They kept driving, but the atmosphere in the cab had turned sour. Around 2A, they pulled up to a mandatory checkpoint pole. Ryan stepped out to sign the physical ledger attached to the post. "Hey, Ryan," Steve called out, his voice trembling. "Look at the last entry." Ryan leaned down. The handwriting was neat, precise. It was his own signature, dated for tonight. The time listed was 1:45 a.m., 15 minutes before they had reached this checkpoint. "Someone is messing with us," Ryan muttered. "Maybe the other patrol unit?" "There is no other unit," Steve snapped. "We're the only ones out here." Panic surged. Ryan scrambled back into the Jeep. As he turned the ignition, he noticed something in the dirt-fresh, heavy-duty tire treads. They weren't from their Jeep. They were wider, deeper, and they were heading toward their base camp. They sped back, the high beams cutting through the trees. When they reached the compound, the main gate was unlocked. Their supervisor's trailer was dark. Ryan grabbed his heavy-duty flashlight and stepped out, Steve trailing behind him with a tire iron. They didn't find a ghost. They found a workshop. Hidden behind a stack of logging equipment was a makeshift bunker, illuminated by a bank of high-end monitors. Ryan's blood turned to ice. The screen showed dozens of angles of the forest, including real-time footage of their own Jeep from the last 3 hours. Steve gasped, dropping the tire iron. "Ryan, look." On the central screen, a figure was sitting in a chair, watching the feed. He wasn't a shadow. He was a man in standard-issue Forest Service gear, his face obscured by the glow of the monitors. He was holding a high-frequency radio transmitter. The man slowly turned around. He looked exhausted, his eyes bloodshot. He held up a finger to his lips, then pointed to a wall covered in photos, hundreds of them. Grainy, nighttime shots of security guards, taken from the same distance, always from the tree line. "You're the replacements," the man rasped. "I've been driving this route for 42 days. I forgot how to leave. He told me if I stayed in the Jeep, I'd be safe." Ryan looked past the man toward the back of the bunker. There, in the corner, sat the real supervisor, slumped over a desk with a gunshot wound. Beside him was a map of the plantation, marked with kill zones. The man in the chair picked up a radio. He keyed it, and the speaker in the bunker crackled. "Stop the Jeep," he mimicked, perfectly replicating Ryan's voice. The man stood up, pulling a suppressed pistol. He was a broken pawn, forced to play a sick game of predator and prey. "He's watching from the trees," the man whispered, nodding toward the woods. "And he doesn't like it when the loop is broken." Outside, the forest was shattered by the metallic clack of a rifle being chambered. The man fired at the ceiling, shattering the bulbs. In the sudden pitch black, Ryan lunged for the door. Steve grabbed his jacket, pulling him toward the clearing. They sprinted into the tree line, lungs burning. As Ryan reached the boundary fence, he heard the single, wet thud of a suppressed shot behind them. He didn't stop. He pushed Steve through the gap in the wire, tumbling onto the highway. They scrambled into their vehicle, the engine roaring, and floored it away, leaving the woods behind forever. Ryan looked at Steve, both of them trembling, alive. They were out.